Welcome friends, welcome back to the kitchen, welcome back to Sunday morning, the old cookbook show. Today we're going to do something out of the Rumford Complete Cookbook. This copy was published in 1927. Rumford, the Rumford Chemical Works, was a company that made baking soda, baking powders, that sort of things. And they very early jumped on the cookbook trend that other baking powder and baking soda companies used, except Rumford took, for the most part, a slightly different tack. Most of the baking soda and baking powder company cookbooks that I have are small, little paperback ephemera. Use them, they hang around for a little while, they get replaced often. You always get a new one handed out to you with new recipes and new ideas, and every recipe in the cookbook contains that company's product. Rumford took a different, sort of a different path. This is a hardcover book. And I would say 95% of the recipes in this hardcover book don't use Rumford products. They're just regular recipes. There is a little bit at the front about why you should use Rumford and what makes Rumford so much better than the competition. But most of the recipes in here are just useful household recipes. And what they were hoping was that even though they're not asking for Rumford products in a recipe, you'd still be pulling this book off the shelf. You'd have it in your kitchen. You would see their name, and that name recognition would always be in the back of your brain. And you'd say, wow, they really did me a solid on that oxtail soup recipe. I'm going to try something else. I'm going to buy their product. I'm going to use it. So we're going to do something from the entrees and cheese dishes section. We're going to do ham and macaroni scallop. Now, we've gone through this many times in the past. The recipe asks for 18 sticks of macaroni. This is a stick of macaroni. Long, thin, has a hole through the middle. You probably can't see it. I can. This is an American recipe. So before you go all Vincenzo on me, this is an American recipe. This has very little to do with the Italian experience and everything to do with the Italian-American experience. In fact, it's probably closer to a Swiss recipe than an Italian recipe, but it is wholly American. And in this time period, this book was published in 1927 and earlier. If a recipe asked for macaroni, this is what they were asking for. If they wanted you to use those little small elbow macaronis, it would say elbow macaroni. But if it just said macaroni, this is what they wanted. And this is a cookbook put out by a macaroni manufacturer based in New Jersey. Started in the mid to late 1800s in New Jersey, still operating today in New Jersey. And this was to sell their macaroni products. And you can see, based on what's inside, they sell this as macaroni in a little box, 9-ounce box. But they also sell elbow macaroni. There's the cutoff. And so language changes. Today, you'd be hard-pressed to go to a grocery store and find this called macaroni. Mueller's no longer makes it in this form. You would go to the grocery store today and you would say, I'm buying macaroni, and you would buy elbow macaroni. The elbow is understood. But it's still out there. You can still find it. And I know that in the comments section, people will drive themselves nuts trying to figure out what it is I'm cooking and what it's called today. So I'm supposed to break it into smaller pieces. I'm just going to break them in half. The recipe tells me to cook them for 30 minutes, but we all know that 8 or 9 minutes and it'll be done. And people ask me about this basket. Got it from a restaurant supply house here in Toronto called Tap Fong. They're on Spadina Avenue, downtown Toronto. I don't shop for kitchen products in the mall. I go to restaurant supply companies and buy everything that I use in the kitchen. There's no brand name on them, and it's usually less expensive to buy the stuff that the pros are using, and it lasts longer. So that's all broken in half. My water hasn't quite come up to a boil yet. Boiling salted water on the go. Next, we're going to make a roux. So first step to make the roux is we're going to melt some butter. So I'll get that into the pan. Start that melting. Water is boiling, so in goes the pasta, the macaroni. I'm going to need a cup of milk, so Get that going. There we go. So this recipe is a product of the time period that this cookbook was published in. And it's one of those what I would call living cookbooks. There was always a new edition. Some recipes fall by the wayside, new recipes brought in. They're tweaked based on ingredients and new ideas in cooking and that sort of thing. And when I was measuring everything out, it's really sparse. Like the ingredient list is really sparse. And this is 1927, and I have to believe that this was printed before the crash. So I don't think the Depression really had anything to do with it just yet. I don't know. And it's kind of weird because there's not much in this recipe. Okay, butter's melted. In goes some flour, and we'll whisk that. Mix it all in and cook it. I don't want to brown this. Browning adds flavor, but it also diminishes the thickening power. Let's whisk in our milk. There we go. So this is supposed to cook until it starts to thicken. Whisking it, watching it carefully, and I'm supposed to put some pepper in. This pepper is the only spicing, the only flavoring. There's no salt. The recipe says that all of the salt should come from the ham. This is, I believe, a recipe that is a leftovers recipe. You would have had ham on the weekend, on Saturday or Sunday for the big meal. You would have ham left over, and this is sort of one of those things that you would cook later in the week to use up your leftovers. Now, I'm going to cheat. The recipe asks for breadcrumbs, and I had some crackers that I crushed up. And I'm supposed to add to that melted butter, but my butter has hardened up a little bit because it's cold in here today. I'll get that mixed in. We'll be good. We'll be good. It'll be fine. Okay, so that mixed in pretty nicely. Again, of course, 1927, cookbooks are written in a way that they allow you to make choices based on your own kitchen, what you have in your own kitchen. There's a section at the front that says, if a recipe calls for butter, use whatever fat you have on hand. Recipes really were about letting you, the person making the dish, allowing you to make substitutions. And in some cases, they don't even call out specifics. This just calls for cheese, whatever cheese you would have on hand. And more than likely, since you're in the United States, you probably have cheddar on hand, or some sort of farm cheese. Anyway, so you can make those substitutions. You are free and allowed. You don't have to go to the Andes to find some sort of goat cheese to put in your dish. You can just get whatever you've got out of the fridge, the ice box, or whatever the local vendor had. So I've got a greased baking dish, and the noodles are cooked. So I'm gonna pull them out of the water and just sit them in this dish so they don't run all over. Give this one last whisk. Looking good. Okay, so this is a layered dish. In goes some macaroni. Get a layer of macaroni in. Let's see. A couple more along the edge here. Some ham. Some cheese. And some sauce. And so there's really not a whole lot going on here. There's a dish that we made recently called macaroni pie, Caribbean dish often associated with, in my circle of friends, Trinidad, but certainly something that you see all over the Caribbean. Same sort of thing with this sauce and the long tube macaroni. Wonderful dish. A little bit of green spice. I'm sure Julie will come in and say, why didn't you put green spice in it? Okay, so it's just layers. I know you know how to make layers. And sprinkle on the breadcrumb butter mixture. Now, the only real information about baking it is bake until the topping is browned. Everything that's in here is already cooked, so you're really just cooking it to sort of bring it together and brown that top. I've got the oven preheated to 350. I'm going to leave this on the counter for probably about a half an hour until just before Julie gets home from work, and then I'll pop it in the oven and brown it, and we'll do a tasting. Okay, I don't know if I need a knife. I need a knife. I'm gonna cut through the macaronis.
Hey, Glenn.
Hey, Jules.
Hey, friends. You're slicing
see.
your pasta?
Yeah.
Spoon, fork. It looks fork-like, but it looks...
I'm going to say more fork than spoon.
Okay. Got a little
Okay.
ham,
Yeah.
a little pasta. Okay. Like a white sauce?
Yeah, just a simple white sauce. Really easy. Okay, so
We're going to share that one? Because
yeah.
it looks like you were struggling there, Glenn.
using elbow macaroni would certainly...
Oh, instead of the traditional long
instead of the long macaroni, would certainly make it easier to get it out of the pan.
What did the recipe call for?
18 sticks of macaroni. There's really not much in it. Most of the flavor comes from the ham.
It's a bit like a mac and cheese.
Yeah, I mean,
I mean, really.
it's one of the early versions of mac and cheese, and it's really light on the cheese. Super light on the cheese, actually. More in the
It's all
white sauce.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's comfort food. Inexpensive, comforting food. Easy to make, inexpensive. That'll be great for lunch the rest of the week.
And easy to, you know, make your own. Right? Throw in some, as always, throw in some peas.
Well, and
Right?
if you don't have
vegetables, throw in whatever.
don't have leftover ham, bacon. Just fry up some bacon and put it in, and you'd come to sort of the same end.
You know, you could add a little sriracha if that's your thing. That's my thing.
I knew you were going to say something about hot sauce. Where is it? Oh, did I take it inside?
Took it to the other fridge.
It's in the other fridge. I was thinking green sauce, green spice.
Oh, green spice would be really good on it.
Yeah,
Actually, green spice, you just throw that right in right away.
yeah.
Uh-huh.
Bake it with the green spice. Okay. So, ham and macaroni scallop, it's a winner because it is so basic and comforting and easy, inexpensive, and something that was great for lunch.
There you go.
Thanks for stopping by. See you again soon.